Thank you, Brother Richard, for sitting down once again for Behind the Final Call cover story. This issue is volume number 38, number 47. August 27th is the date on the paper. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, sir. Title article on the paper is Deal or No Deal. Jay-Z's on the cover. Why this cover story?
Well, I mean, certainly this is one of the biggest, most interesting, and perhaps one of the most important stories happening in Black America right now. And this is, of course, Jay-Z's decision to enter into a partnership with the NFL to, in some ways, manage or connect with his entertainment platforms, as well as to connect with its Inspire Change initiative, which is supposed to be a kind of response to players kneeling, led first by Colin Kaepernick, as they protested police brutality, injustice, racism, and these things in American society. So Jay-Z recently had a meeting at his company headquarters with Roger Goodell and some other folks from the NFL. Very tightly scripted, very tightly controlled media event. The NFL were the only people allowed to video, to take photographs, and only select people were invited to come in. So interesting, it's been controversial, of course. Some people have accused Jay-Z of all kinds of things. And because he did not come out and say that the blackballing of Colin Kaepernick should be reversed and Colin Kaepernick should have a job in the NFL, he was asked some questions about that and kind of made some statements. I think his intent was to say it was that the whole situation was bigger than a single person, even though he felt that, you know, Colin Kaepernick's role was important. He supported Colin Kaepernick in the past. But a big part of his argument was, what do we do next? So the protest comes at a certain point after the protest. You ask the question, or the person that you are protesting asks the question, well, what do we do now to resolve the problem, take care of the issue, and move forward? The interesting thing to me is, of course, people have started taking sides. Are you with Jay-Z? Are you with Colin Kaepernick? I think it's really a lot bigger than that. I don't think that's the way to look at it. I think that we're still early in these discussions, so it's kind of hard to tell where this thing is going. Some other things came out after that meeting. At Roc Nation headquarters, it was reported that Jay-Z is working or planning on becoming an NFL owner. It was also reported that what looks like a similar deal to the one he made with the NFL, he discouraged Jermaine Dupri, the producer from Atlanta, from making, I guess, right before the last Super Bowl. So, you know, there's some things there, but I think that Dr. Michael Eric Dyson made some good comments where he said he's also a Jay-Z biographer, by the way. He's got a new book out about Jay-Z. But what he said is, we can agree or disagree, but we should stop the name calling. And I think that's important. I think if you want to critique an idea, if you want to critique a strategy, if you want to even ask about whose interests are being served and how and why, I think that's legitimate. But I think the name calling gets us into another arena. Right now, from my view, the biggest winner is the NFL. Because now the conversation has shifted to Jay-Z and Colin Kaepernick versus what the league has done to blunt black voices of protest, what the league has done to blackball Colin Kaepernick, which is in effect punishing someone that stood up for social justice, even though it has kind of put forth its own initiative with some players, but other players are critical. They feel that it doesn't go far enough. In addition to, you know, you've had owners like the owner of the Dallas Cowboys emphatically say at one point, nobody's protesting around here. So this thing continues to develop. But I think it's important that we really step back and that we stick to program and position and not personal attacks, Because I think if we stick to program and position, we can actually get to what are the best ideas, what are the best strategies. The personal attacks kind of bring up emotions, and people start to pick sides based, I think, more on emotions and loyalties, as opposed to, well, what's the best strategy? What's the best time? Is it time for a deal, or is it no time for a deal? So those are some of the things that we thought about when we did this piece. We tried to be, and we tried to be as balanced as possible, but certainly there's a lot of criticism out there, and we'll see.
Yes, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, many of us know and see Jay-Z now. One of the things that you can't argue about him is he has definitely moved beyond hip-hop as just a means of entertainment, and has moved and made some very strong moves as a businessman and an entrepreneur.
No doubt about that. I mean, he's the first hip-hop billionaire. I mean, which is incredible when you think about where hip-hop came from and where he came from. And all of his money did not come from hip-hop, but various ventures he's invested in. He's former owner, part owner of the Brooklyn Nets, which he was a minority owner. Then he sold a stake. I think he also sold a stake in the arena too that they built. So the other thing that I think we have to look at is Jay-Z has also supported these causes. He's spoken out against them. So has his wife, Beyonce, in terms of speaking out against police brutality. You remember the Super Bowl performance by Beyonce a couple years ago, tribute to the Black Panthers, and other things that she's done, along with other things that he's done. He supported getting Meek Mill, the rapper, released, who was really in a horrible situation in Philadelphia on probation for 10 years, and really seemed to be in the clutches of a judge that had a personal vendetta. He's talked about and supported cash bail reform. He's bailed out people that were demonstrators. He's done documentaries like the case of Khalif Browder, a young black man who was imprisoned in New York for, I think, 3 years. 3 years awaiting trial. Ultimately, he was released, but he killed himself. And he's done other things in line with this movement. He supported the Black Lives Matter movement. So there's some history there that I think is worthy of looking at. But I think, we'll see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But there's an article, and actually there's an article that deals with Meek Mills as well, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But black businesses, black consumers, a necessary alliance. Can you give us a little bit about the context behind that article?
August is actually Black Business Month. So we wanted to, and this is by our managing editor, Starla Muhammad, we wanted to really highlight black businesses. We wanted to highlight the continuing need for entrepreneurship and for us to build economic strength, not just for the sake of building economic strength, but if we can have a stronger economic base, we have the ability to begin to solve some of the problems in our community. Lack of development, lack of jobs, lack of productive outlets, lack of reinvestment into our neighborhoods, lack of control because we don't own the businesses. So right now we're sitting in the foodie spot at 7350 South Stony Island Avenue. Black owned, which is not a drain on the community, but is offering good food, good service, occupying a formerly vacant space, and is an example of what we can do in a principled way to create opportunity for ourselves to deliver services. So this is what this story is about, and we talk about the numbers of black women who are entrepreneurs. We talk about the number of black businesses that have grown, and among black business advocates, they're saying that the tide has changed, where now there's a fuller embrace of the need for black businesses, and it's moving in a very positive direction.
Yes, sir. Thank you. A little jump, but still really in alignment with what the responsibility that we as a community have to take for our own destiny, and not depending on anyone else outside of us to do for ourselves what we have the ability to do for ourselves. And that has been a long legacy of the Nation of Islam, but in particular, the Muhammad University of Islam, which is coming to celebrate its 30th anniversary, recently had its graduation. Can you give us a little bit about those two things?
One, we know that Muhammad University has a long history going back to the 1930s. But with the nation being dismantled in the 1970s, when the minister started to rebuild in the late 70s, in I guess 1988, 89, he reinstituted Muhammad University. So there's now this fundraising dinner, which will be September 8th here in Chicago at the South Shore Cultural Center. Going to have a great brother Nuri Muhammad as a speaker. And so this is about supporting independent black education. And so we also celebrated the 2019 graduating classes from Muhammad University, both high school and those moving from basically grammar school into high school. So I mean, it's a great opportunity, and I think to see our young people speak, in particular, to see the young women speak so powerfully, to see them speak so intelligently, and to see them really represent a great image of what the future of black people can be. I mean, very inspiring. So we wanted to highlight both of these things because we know that education is the key, but it has to be a proper education.
Of course, we briefly mentioned the story of, in the context of Jay-Z, and of course, a big supporter of our brother Meek Mills. Can you talk a little bit about the legal victory for Meek Mills?
Well, this is a piece that our prison reform ministry minister wrote out of Philadelphia. But essentially, Meek Mill has, he was under this 10-year situation with this judge is supposed to be on probation. Looks like he's going back to court later this month, and we will see what the disposition of his case will be. Yes. So a lot of people are watching. We're watching. A lot of people came out to support him and to support this problem in the criminal justice system in terms of how people are treated when they're on parole and probation. The amount of power that people have, judges have, to hold somebody under different conditions, whether those conditions are fair and whether those conditions actually help the person move forward, or do they keep them kind of ensconced in the system?
Yes, sir. I know there's a lot, as we always say, a lot going on in the news, a lot going on as it relates to politics, as it relates to international news, all of that's in here.
Yeah.
You got to get the paper. Don't just depend on what we say here. It's important that you read and read and read. We only touched the surface of some of the articles in here, but is there anything else in here that you want to touch on?
And I know I'm a little distracted now, but definitely the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's article, and definitely the minister's article, God Has Come to Answer Our Cry for Justice. I think ultimately, everything we talk about, in a sense, comes back to this question of justice. The question of what kind of future black people want to have. How are we going to have that future? How do we get there? What do we need to do for ourselves? So there's a very important spiritual element of that, which can never be discounted. And so you find that in the writings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and his exegesis of scripture, and his unfolding of that which was not unfolded in the way that he did prior to him. So there's a lot of things that we kind of recognize now. We don't debate too much. I think most black people would kind of generally say, well, we recognize that black folk in America kind of fit the the prophecy of the children of Abraham in some way, right? We may agree that we need to do something for ourselves economically, and other things like that. But we should never forget that there was a man who was like a life-giving sun, and his wisdom was like water, and wherever it fell, it brought up vegetation, or it brought up new studies, new information, new knowledge, new understanding. So to go back to that source is very critical in terms of us understanding what time it is in terms of the spiritual realm and how that impacts what we perceive to be reality. So likewise, the minister's words, guidance, and instruction provide the same type of information that we need. So, again, we say read those. We got also a story out of Houston about a fight to preserve a burial site where it is our ancestors who died that were part of the convict leasing program. This is a program that actually still exists today, believe it or not. In some states, we did a piece about it a few weeks ago. But under this program, this is after slavery, quote unquote, right? But you had prisons leasing inmates out to private industry. And it's still happening today, right? And so it's about, I think about 70 remains were found in Sugar Land, Texas. So you can read about that. You can read about that fight for the dignity and to keep these graves from being desecrated. Lastly, my editorial this week, which deals with the shooting of a brother in Colorado. Devon Bailey, 19 years old. I mean, a very tragic, questionable, in some ways infuriating situation. The young man and another brother, the police walked up on him, said, "Hey, we got a report of somebody with a gun. Just, stand still. Don't reach for your waist. Stay right here." So the young man runs. He's running away, and officer shoots him in the back. So I think ultimately he was found to have had a weapon. But the question is, how can you just shoot somebody? And in my editorial, I argue that the Supreme Court has actually settled this question during the 1980s. It ruled police officers cannot just shoot somebody from running away. They can only shoot if that person is a danger to them or a danger to others. So we wanted to share that story, and we wanted to share that view. We hope that it will add to our understanding and to our discussion. But there's a lot in here, and we hope that everybody will get it at finalcall.com, get your digital edition. And we highlighted some of the FOI on the street as we always do. But stay in touch with us and stay on top of the news by reading what we put out.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I was looking for, I think in New York, of course, it was announced that the officer Pantaleo, that's on page 4. He has been fired, but you look at how long that process took, and he could not even be fired. He literally had to go through a process with an administrative law judge in the police department, and then the police commissioner himself had to fire this man. So it says something about the power of these police unions and the fact that it's taken so long. But the family has said this is still the beginning. They want other officers who were there prosecuted, fired. The other thing I like to say about the Eric Garner case is we should be careful about how people characterize this, because I've seen it characterized as him resisting arrest. I think if you look at that video, this man is not resisting arrest. I mean, he's a big brother. So if he was resisting arrest, he would have been fighting. You see him, for the most part, his hands are down at his side. He just says to the police, "Man, why don't y'all leave me alone?" And then you see him swarm Pantaleo with his arm around his neck. Then you see him push his face into the ground. And 11 times this man says, "I can't breathe." None of that matters. So this is still an issue. His firing is, again, as the family and Reverend Al Sharpton
of the National Action Network has said this is still not the end. And again, we just last week or a couple weekends ago, we just celebrated not celebrated, but we marked the 5th anniversary of the killing of Mike Brown. So as we mark that anniversary, we look at the killing of Devon Bailey, another 19-year-old. So, there's a lot going on, and we need to stay in touch and stay in tune.
Yes, sir. Thank you. If I keep on looking through the paper, I'm going to find something else. But I don't have to find it. You can find it yourself. As he said, get your digital subscription to the Final Call newspaper. Get your physical subscription of the Final Call newspaper, and support the work of the Nation of Islam and the Final Call. When you see those brothers in the street, go ahead and get a paper or two. Make a donation. Until next time, Behind the Final Call cover story. Peace.
All right. Okay.